Thanks for joining us today, everyone. It is good to be here for this special live stream conversation. I'm Mike Andrews, the Communications Director at Center for Christian Virtue. I'm joined in this part of our live stream today by our President, Aaron Baer, and our Policy Director, David Mahan. And later on, we'll also hear from Paul Fitzpatrick of the 1792 Exchange. There's been a lot going on this week, the past few days, and we just wanted to take this opportunity to bring you up to speed with what some of it means for Ohio. There's life issues, there's family issues, things like that we just wanted to have this conversation, to give you a chance to hear from CCV and to also give you a chance to ask some of your questions. If you don't mind, before I get started today, I'd love to ask the Lord to bless our time together this afternoon. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with our brothers and sisters around Ohio about the things concerning our state. Lord, none of this catches you by surprise. We know it is all under your sovereign control. We are grateful that you have put us in this time and in this place for a time such as this, that we can respond to the issues of our day, hopefully with grace and charity, but also with truth, Lord. More than anything, we want to bring about your kingdom by kingdom ways. We want to be loving to others and treat them as we would want to be treated. But also, Lord, we want to acknowledge your place as the rightful king of our lives in our universe. Help us as we unpack these issues to do so with clarity and kindness. And I ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, Aaron, I'm going to start with you. Probably one of the things that generated the most buzz around our office this week in a good way was the backpack bill proponent hearings that happened the other night. And I want to just ask if you would give our audience today an overview of where we are right now with backpack and why we're pretty excited about the hearing that took place on Tuesday.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Mike, for all you do with CCV. Grateful for you, brother. You know, this was really a historic day on Tuesday because for those of you who have been tracking with CCV for a while, you know, our heart has been to fundamentally reform the education system in Ohio that's failing so many children academically and also trapping so many parents in an education environment that is forcing dangerous ideologies on their kids, whether it's CRT or this LGBT ideology. It's a very difficult situation for so many families. And the only way it's going to get better and what's going to get us on the right path is if we start funding students with our state dollars and not systems. So that's what the backpack bill does, is it ties state funding to kids so that wherever they go, the dollars follow if those families want those dollars, right? Nobody's ever going to be forced to access this if they don't want to use it. And so that's been a big idea for a long time. Ohio's had some robust school choice programs, but this is really taking us to the next level. And the reality is when we first started talking about this, so many people said that can never happen in Ohio. The teachers unions are too strong. The opposition is too great. But we said, no, we have to start somewhere and start building the message and building the groundswell. And so that's where we've gotten to with the backpack bill. And this Tuesday, rather, we had our first ever proponent hearing on the backpack bill. It's Senate Bill 11. It's Senator Sandy O'Brien, actually from my old neck of the woods, the Warren area, Northeast Ohio, is the sponsor of the bill. She has one version of the backpack bill that's basically universal ed choice. So it's a little bit different than the one we introduced last year with Representative Reardon McClain. We worked to introduce with Representative Reardon McClain and Representative Marilyn John in the House. That's what's called an empowerment scholarship account, that those dollars can be used for a lot of other educational environments besides just private schools. But we had a hearing on Tuesday, and it was phenomenal. We packed out the hearing room. Actually, they had to open overflow hearings because we had so many students and parents and education leaders there speaking up in support of the backpack bill. It went so well. It was one of those ones where by the end of it, you know, the opposition, especially folks on the committee that aren't supportive of the backpack bill, they really didn't have much to say because it's hard to argue with. It's better to fund students and not systems. And especially when you hear all these kids that say, this is why school choice has helped me and we need to make this available to every family. It's so compelling. So it was a really great day, Mike.
Yeah, and you hit on something there that I thought was one of the highlights of the hearing, the kids, the students that came
Yeah.
out and gave their testimonies. And not only did they give their testimonies, but they waited a long time to do it.
Yeah.
And shared some very powerful stories. These aren't anecdotes. This is actually how school choice could help them either with learning situations or just educational preference in general. You can see the demand and the need for this in Ohio.
Well, and especially when you hear kids say, I'm able to learn about God in my schools, right? I'm able to have, and as a parent who, is doing the same thing for my kids, it just means so much to know that I'm able to send my kids to an educational environment that's reaffirming our values, our beliefs, right? And I would honestly say the truth about how we were made, and the truth about who God is. So it was such a powerful day. I'll tell you, Mike, we're from here. I believe there's another hearing scheduled for next week. Our hope is to see this get done this year, even by June. Wow. There's both Senate Bill 11 is what we testified on last week. Troy McIntosh, who leads our Ohio Christian Education Network, spoke. But also there's House Bill 11. Just so happens that they both got the same number this year, which makes things a lot easier for us. So Senate Bill, House Bill 11. And that is sponsored again by Representative Reardon McLean and Marilyn John in the House. And actually, both the Speaker of the House, Jason Stevens, and the leader of the Republican caucus, Derek Mahan, both said that backpack is a priority for them. And so we know the votes are there. There's more than majority support for both in both chambers. The teachers unions are being pretty brutal right now, and the fight is going to be pretty heavy. So this is why we have backpackbill.com for people to speak up and make sure they hear your representative and senator here and the governor here that you want universal school choice.
Yeah, and you mentioned Troy McIntosh, the OSIN executive director. Just want to quickly shout out his testimony at the hearing as well, because it was powerful and it really unpacked or really took down a lot of the issues that the other side would bring into this argument, I thought.
Yeah. Really, the only thing that blew him out of the water was those little kids from Heritage out of Akron or Canton. They sat there for 2 hours for SB1 even before the hearing started for them, and they walked up there, well behaved, put their little manila folder down and just ripped. I mean, they blessed me. I mean, everybody in the room, their heart was gripped. And one little girl said she struggled with dyslexia, and she read her story, and the teacher got right back up after her and started weeping, and how she worked with her and she couldn't read when she got to the school. And I mean, just absolutely phenomenal hearing. But Troy did his thing for sure. Definitely a mic drop moment.
Absolutely. It was a powerful day. And there's still time to testify. So if you've got a great story, if you've got kids in your area that want to testify, there's going to be a lot more hearings on this here in the House, in the budget coming up. But what's important is that you have to make your voice heard. The teachers unions, the lobbyists, there's a lot of forces that don't want this to happen, but the people want it, and the representatives want it. The support is there. We've counted the votes. The votes are there. Now it's a question of, is there the strength and the courage to get it done? And that's where everybody on this call and all the schools and all the families all over the state, your voice is what's going to get this done.
Absolutely. And I just want to remind everybody who's watching with us today, we do have a Q&A session available. You can drop your questions in there. Just in the interest of time, we're going to keep moving and hit some of these different topics that we want to, because we might answer your questions as we go. But if there's something we don't address, if we've got time, drop them in there, and we'll keep an eye on that and make sure that we're talking about the pieces of these in different bills and legislations that you want to hear about. David, I'm going to throw it over to you. Kind of do a twofold question here around some of the transgender issues and some of the bills that are being introduced or reintroduced around that area, specifically Save Women's Sports and the SAFE Act. I know we had a press conference with the SAFE Act yesterday, and we could start there and then we'll go to Save Women's Sports. So just talk a little bit about the press conference and where you think that SAFE Act is in terms of the 135th General Assembly.
Yeah, so, obviously, last year we had SAFE Act. This year, the encouraging piece is that, Mike, we've got, between Representative Click, we've got 39 co-sponsors. So 40 people 40 state reps, already signed on to this bill. As you all know, we only need 50 votes, but 40 of them are actually signed on as sponsor or co-sponsor to this legislation. So that is extremely encouraging. There's absolutely no reason. If it actually goes to the Health Policy Committee, there's actually 6 co-sponsors on the committee, and you only need 7 votes out of there to get it passed. So I want everybody watching that one very, very closely. You all know Save Adolescents from Experimentation. We have several gender clinics, 7 gender clinics in the state of Ohio performing these procedures at some stage of transition or another. Puberty blockers as young as 8 or 9 years old, and then cross-sex hormones at 15, 16 years old. And then they go on, and we've had parents even tell us that we've got surgeries going on under 18. The important thing for everybody to understand, Mike, is that this bill strictly just deals with 18 and under. We're dealing with pediatric sex change procedures here in the state of Ohio. And as you mentioned, yesterday we had a press conference, very exciting. For those of you that have that follow Matt Walsh, What is a Woman? We actually had Scott Nugent come in for the press conference to field questions and kind of go back and forth with Representative Click, who had just another encouraging mode, had 20-some state reps standing behind him during the press conference. I mean, just very strong show of force and what the will of the caucus is for this issue, which they're saying is a priority issue. So it was a phenomenal press conference. Scott, for those of you that don't know, is what they call trans man. He's a biological female who went through procedures at 42. The strength of his testimony and story, which will feature on our podcast next week, is the harms that were done and the suffering that he's going through as an adult, who went through these procedures. And he, as a trans identified person, is saying this should never take place with children. Those of you may remember the hearings last year. We had trans identified man coming to represent an entire organization of trans identified adults who said this should not be taking place with children. We had Chloe Cole come in, who had a double mastectomy just as a 14-year-old girl. And now she's all over the country telling her story and doing a phenomenal job. Was just recently in Tennessee. So there's a lot of momentum for these bills. I believe right now, Mike, we've got about 27 states that are engaged in this type of policy regulations on what hospitals are allowed to do with these babies. And just we've got a few different things going on here. This bill will deal with the ability of doctors to be able to perform and prescribe medication, perform these procedures. We also have restrictions on what counselors and psychologists are able to do without parental consent in terms of counseling in schools or out of schools. And also there's a piece in this bill that discusses and deals with the ability to refer these kids out of state for these very same services. So very robust bill. We're all excited about it and can't wait to see the hearing start. Waiting for a bill number on it.
And the one of the big things on this too is, again, it's kind of like backpack, but in some ways even more intense because, well, maybe not so, Justin. It's big business. This is the money behind this, and some of you might have seen. Again, David mentioned Matt Walsh. There was a video of an event at Vanderbilt University where you had a hospital administrator talking about how much money they can make on these procedures, especially when they do them on kids. It's almost like the tobacco industry, trying to get kids to smoke at 10, 11, 12 years old, because then they have a customer for life, right? You get a kid on puberty blocking drugs and cross-sex hormones and get them medicalized for the rest of their life. They're going to be medical patients because of
it's been estimated 1.3 million, Aaron, over the course of a lifetime, and that's not even talking about complications.
Yeah, and so it's this shows why the opposition is so hefty, is so big. But again, we know we have majority support at the legislature. We know we have a majority. This in polls kills. Like people know inherently it's wrong to sterilize kids. It's wrong to be doing this to children. But again, this is where the Capitol Square swamp is very powerful and very influential and terrifies members, right? Lawmakers. And so this is where your voice, and again, I say this all the time. I know Fox News and everybody gives all the attention to Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is more of a reality show than a policy-making body, right? The actual laws that impact our lives happen to the state house, and your voice calling state lawmakers and reaching out to them. And we're going to have action alerts and all these things up on our website for you to take advantage of, to be able to make it easy to contact your lawmakers. Your voice makes the huge difference here.
Yeah, and just to be completely clear on the SAFE Act, this bill has not officially been introduced this General Assembly, correct? We're still waiting.
Correct. But the cool thing about yesterday, the press conference, was to actually introduce the bill. Yeah. And Representative Click actually walked over there with a parent of someone who was groomed into this thing. And then Scott Nugent, a trans-identified male, and they actually handed the bill over to the clerk at the State House to introduce it. It was a phenomenal moment.
So we should have a bill number even potentially today. And we'll obviously have that posted up on ccv.org.
Great. Well, also along those lines, I mentioned Save Women's Sports. That is a bill that was introduced. The House Republicans announced that a couple of weeks ago with some other legislation. David, can you just give us an update on Save Women's Sports real quick too?
Yep. That's coming back around. House Bill 6. This one, we've got about 18 states that have passed legislation in this, with Save Women's Sports. And I know many of you have seen, you've got Riley Gaines was the woman that young lady who at the NCAA championships came out and said, not only did this guy, William Thomas, or he calls himself Leah Thomas, beat all these women in the pool, breaking records and things like that. Whereas he was like 400th, 500th, in the nation. He ranked, for the first 2 years of competing. Now he's first and fifth, and it's just crazy. But she's actually coming out saying not only is he beating everybody in the pool, but he's watching everybody in the locker room and exposing himself. At the time, he had male genitalia and was exposing himself to girls in the locker room. And so she just recently came out talking about this. This is something that it really is a no-brainer. And on this one, Aaron and Mike, I don't understand how this didn't pass last year with so much people pushing for it. You guys understand, before the NCAA championships that all the legislators over there like to talk about, this was ridiculous. This grown man winning all these championships. But then I tell them straight to their face, but you all said nothing when they competed in Akron. If we'd have passed this bill last GA, that person would have never been able to compete in Akron and make it to the NCAA championships. It's all about, it's not about gender identities. This bill is about what people do with their bodies, sports. And it's not about really taking anything away from anyone. It's simply to uphold Title IX, which basically defines, rights in education and sports for young girls. And I think it's clear to understand that, when you're talking about this issue, and this is what we try to share with them over at the State House, it's not just about sports. It's about safety. It's about scholarships for kids that have been working their entire life, to compete on a higher level so that they can get scholarships and go to school, and so it's and thrive academically. So this is so much bigger than just sports.
Yeah. And I think one of the things too, David, about the, obviously media coverage is often very misleading, but this is one that really gets me, because the headline on this typically is ban on trans athletes competing, gets introduced. Let me be clear. No one is banned from competing. No matter, everybody has the opportunity to compete, right? But somebody with a biological male, no matter how they identify, is not allowed to play in girl sports. That's what this bill says, right? So you can be a biological male and say you identify as a girl, or you could say you're a biological man and say you identify as whatever you want. You still just have to compete in the same class with the people that have the same biology and biological condition as you, right? Yeah. This would be no different than saying a junior in high school who they can say they identify as a sixth grader. They don't have a right to compete in middle school sports, right?
I'm so glad you bring this up, the whole media side of this. This is probably, for me, it's the most frustrating thing. We're about banning something, banning, these poor kids from competing in sports. It's really about saving sports for women and for girls, right? As soon as you let the first boy compete against girls, you have no more women's sports. All you have is male sports and co-ed sports. Right. And so we're trying to protect the space. But on the media thing, even yesterday, Mike, when I was at the press conference, Scott Nugent got pretty frustrated and started going off on the media. Like every time, I'm up here talking about all this stuff that's going on. It's one of the greatest travesties known to America, and it's being done against kids. And you should be ashamed of yourself. There was an actual cameraman that got tired of hearing that, and he literally spoke up from behind the camera and said, "What are you talking about? We're all here, watching you." And so last night I went right home, and probably about 8:30, I got onto the news network's website to see how they covered it. And sure enough, not a word about Scott Nugent, not a word about his testimony. So yes, you showed up and heard every word of this powerful testimony, but you said nothing, and you twisted the language to make it seem like we are coming against people rather than helping people. You just can't believe this stuff.
Yeah. And the fact that this type of legislation is necessary because 99.9% of these issues with a transgender identified individual wanting to compete is males attempting to compete against women. I'm not going to say there's no biological women attempting to compete against men, but you're seeing a preponderance of these cases going the one direction.
That's right. And I'm not mad at Aaron Baer for trying out for the women's wrestling team. I mean, that's his prerogative, right? But I'm glad he got a couple wins. But there was something that just happened in West Virginia. An awesome federal court case. And I want to read what the judge says. He said, "The fact is that transgender girl is biologically male and barring medical intervention would undergo male puberty like other biological males. And biological males generally outperform females athletically. The state is permitted to legislate sports rules on the basis because of sex, and the physical characteristics that flow from it are substantially related to athletic performance and fairness in sports." That was what this federal judge said about Save Women's Sports. And it's as obvious as it is, it's sad that it had to get to that level, but here we are.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Well, let's move on to another big topic from the week. And Aaron, I'm going to toss it back to you to start us off on this one, but we figured this was coming. The pro-abortion, a couple of pro-abortion groups in Ohio have officially announced their ballot language and their intent to go to the November ballot with a measure that would enshrine abortion rights into the Ohio Constitution. Where are we with that? What should the response be from voters, Christians all throughout Ohio?
Yeah, Mike, this is about as serious as it gets for the pro-life community, for the church. For everyone who cares about the health and safety of women and obviously unborn children. The well-funded, politically savvy groups in Planned Parenthood, the ACLU, Protect Choice Ohio, NARAL, they announced on Tuesday their ballot language to put a constitutional amendment very similar to what they passed in Michigan on the ballot this November to create a right to abortion. Now they are going to say, and the media are going to say, that this is creating a right to abortion up to viability, but the exceptions in this bill are a mile wide that basically make it abortion up till birth. It's abolishing the right of parents to say to protect their children from the abortion industry. So no more parental consent before an abortion. It's abolishing basically all health and safety standards for abortion clinics, right? So the next time there's a Kermit Gosnell, and this time in Ohio, the General Assembly will be powerless to do anything to regulate these clinics because this is going to be enshrined in the Ohio Constitution. We knew this was coming, right? This is why, this was not the only reason why, but it was one of the major reasons why we started talking about we need to protect our state constitution, and the General Assembly needs to refer something to the ballot this May to raise the threshold to amend our Constitution to 60%. Some of you have seen the stories. There was everything was kind of moving forward to get this done, and then 22 Republicans in the Ohio House teamed up with 34 Democrats to change who the speaker is, and it was Speaker Jason Stevens is now the one running the show. There was media stories that were saying that a part of the Democrats teaming up with these 22 Republicans was this Constitutional Protection Act, was the Democrats didn't want to see this so that the road could stay clear for them to put abortion on the ballot. And we needed to get this referred to the ballot by January 31st, and that very clearly did not happen. Now, I will say I've met with Speaker Stevens multiple times, and he has been very adamant that did not happen. And he's even said that he would support the 60%, but at this point, it's basically too late. And now we could have tens of thousands, 20, 30,000 abortions every year in Ohio for the rest of forever. That's 20, 30,000 lives taken away if we don't win this campaign because we didn't protect our Constitution. It's very serious. And it's something that, again, Speaker Stevens has been very adamant that he did not do that. But it's something that we need the pro-life community to keep pressure and keep attention on these issues, to say, hey, we need everybody to get in here to protect our Constitution and to fight this initiative. So that's the context of this. I want to set that aside, though, and talk about where we actually go from here. We knew this was coming. We have been preparing for this. For those of you who have been tracking since Roe v. Wade was overturned in last June and the Dobbs decision came down, there have been 6 states that have had this issue put before their voters, and pro-lifers are 0 for 6. There's a lot of reasons why that happened. And one of the main reasons is they were just ill-prepared. We are prepared. You will be seeing a campaign roll out very soon with some very incredible leaders leading the way. CCV will be helping lead that effort and be a part of it. And so be on the lookout even next week for some things. And we're going to mount a very vigorous campaign to expose what this is going to be doing to women and to unborn children, to parents, to kids. It is massive, and it is going to be expensive. These folks, the pro-abortion side had over $40 million in Michigan. The pro-lifers had about 20. We're expecting it could be even double that here in Ohio, if not more. And so, this is your call to get involved with your local right to life. I see even on our Zoom today, I was looking at the list. I see our good friend Laura Streetman from Cincinnati Right to Life is on here. Get involved, get supporting Cincinnati Right to Life, Toledo, Dayton, Cleveland, Columbus, Ohio Right to Life, all of them. Everyone needs you right now, because that's the only way we're going to be able to stop this, is with the body of Christ being engaged, being prayerful, and also not being silenced.
And I think it's worth saying too, Aaron, that we really need people to be informed on this issue, because this is one of those things. We know that we're dealing with wordsmiths that'll twist things and say whatever they want to fit whatever narrative that they want. And reading the bill, you can look over it and say, oh, well, that seems like it's not what CCV is saying this is going to do. But to your point, it's very clearly not putting up any boundaries, and it's certainly taking down some fences that are already in place. So you have to really kind of look at the meaning behind the words and what is actually happening with this language. And you hopefully can get yourself prepared to tell others about it, to communicate the severity of what this issue is on something that looks pretty vanilla if you just read through the language.
Absolutely. And honestly, Mike, the big thing there too is we are going to have a ton of resources to help you do that. A ton of resources for your church, for your pregnancy center, for your community group, for whatever it is. You'll have ads and documents and bulletin inserts and all types of stuff for your church and for you to understand this issue and know how to respond. And we're going to be calling for volunteers to be helping. This is going to be a major effort. And it's going to be, again, all eyes are going to be on Ohio. We're the only state likely going to have this on our ballot this November. And then in 2024, it's likely going to be in 9 states. And I've used this analogy a bunch. I'm going to keep talking about it because it's so appropriate. Guys, Ohio is Gettysburg right now, right? The bad guys have been on the march and kicking butt, frankly. And now they have identified they're feeling really good about themselves. and they're coming up north. They're coming into the good guy territory because they think they can get this done. We have to turn them back here. We have to turn the tide on this fight and send them out. And because if they can win in Ohio, it's going to be really tough to beat them elsewhere.
Yeah, this is not incidental that Ohio is up next, and it's the only place that's up next because now they can pour all of their resources in here. And it's strategic also because of really how last November went with a lot of pro-life candidates winning elections here in Ohio. They're trying to send a message that Ohio isn't as red or isn't as pro-life as it seems to be. And it is going to be a challenge because there's a big fight coming this way, as you said, Aaron. Well, I see we've got our next panelist joining us right now, Paul Fitzpatrick from the 1792 Exchange. Paul, it's good to see you as we shift now from some of the legislative issues that have been going on in Ohio. We'd love to talk with you about woke capitalism and how that's affecting businesses and things like that in our state. And I wondered if you'd just get started by telling us a little bit about the 1792 Exchange and specifically the corporate bias index that your company has produced.
Oh, Paul, you're muted.
I apologize for that. Thanks so much for having me on. Yeah, let me tell you very briefly. 1792 Exchange exists to protect freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and free enterprise. It's in this context of corporations that have been politicized. Corporations historically and legally are obligated to maximize shareholder value, but unfortunately, in recent years, they've been weaponized. They've willingly, in some cases, and they've been actually unwillingly engaged in political fights that have nothing to do with their business. And so our organization exists to protect and equip small businesses and nonprofits, to defend conservative philanthropy, and to engage these woke corporations, to try to encourage them to move back towards neutral. We're not trying to make corporations Republican or Christian. We want corporations to focus on providing excellent products and services, treating everybody equally and fairly, and certainly being good corporate citizens, which includes not polluting and taking care of everybody. So part of our strategy, as I said, is to protect and equip. And so one of the things, and we've talked to people who are running large privately held businesses and small businesses and nonprofits, and they did not have an easy way to evaluate their risk. And what do you mean by risk, right? Okay, Paul. Well, what we saw really exploded in 2020 was nonprofits and small businesses getting debanked and deplatformed, and the left divesting from them or denying services for political, religious, or ideological reasons. And so one of the things that we said is what we need to do is equip these folks really to protect themselves. So we developed this series of reports, the Spotlight reports. And the first you alluded to is our corporate bias ratings. It's very easy. Your listeners can go to 1792exchange.com and go to the Spotlight report. And the first is the corporate bias ratings. What that is we have evaluated now almost 1,100 companies. We've researched them, their policies, and what they're doing and saying in the public sphere. And we're rating them on their likelihood that they will cancel or deny service or divest for, again, political or ideological reasons. So it's a simple stoplight system: red, yellow, green, high risk, medium risk, lower risk. But we're not recommending that people running a small business or a nonprofit or family make a decision just on red, yellow, green. We recommend that you go in, look up the vendors you're using. You can search by company name, or you could search by industry, and look at what they're actually doing and saying. Because what they have done publicly, or using either their brand or their dollars, or whether they've canceled someone or not, or denied service, it may or may not be relevant to you and what you're doing. So we're not suggesting folks make a decision based on red, yellow, green. Look at the details.
And when you talk about services here, there is that consumer services side of it, but also in terms of business, you're talking about the services that they need to in order to function as a business: banking, email services, web hosting, things like that, that should those be removed, this could at least inhibit somebody from being able to operate their business until they find an alternate solution, correct? That's what we're looking at.
That's correct. Think of it as maybe continuity of operations. That's one way that organizations think about it, whether you're a business or a nonprofit. If our bank shut us down today, what would happen? Or if our CRM or our web hosting or our payment processor, that's exactly right. Our database is not intended initially for consumers. Should I buy my coffee here or my coffee there? That's really not what it's about. It's really about, like you said, continuity for small businesses and nonprofits in those key financial and operational functions within their supply chain.
So if we're using this red, yellow, green system as business owners are looking at these reports, if it's not necessarily a recommendation for these companies, how do you recommend that people weigh the information that you're providing in those ratings?
Well, we certainly stand by the data, and we think it's very valuable. And we do think users should take it into consideration. But we are not, the lawyer would make sure I would say, we're not giving financial advice, not investment advice. We don't vet these organizations on their price, nor do we vet on the quality of their products and services. That's really up to you. This is just one data point. And again, there may be such a unique service that a vendor is supplying that there may be only one or two options. What we would do in that case and say, we have a very niche tool that we've got to get, and there are only a couple of vendors who provide that. What we would suggest is that when negotiating a contract or an agreement with that organization, maybe you print out the rating from our database, bring it in and say, hey, you did this, this, and this. We would like you to write into, would you consider changing the terms of our agreement so that you're not going to cancel us for ideological reasons? So that's just a way of using it.
Yeah.
And in terms of ideologies, I do want to just throw it over to Aaron here quickly, because for our Ohio friends and our Ohio business owners, another piece of exciting news this week was that our Christian business partnership launched. And that's an opportunity for like-minded business owners to come together in what we're calling Ohio's first Christian Chamber of Commerce. So a lot of these issues, we're creating this organization that's going to hopefully have a little more power behind it, strengthen numbers, so to speak, to really help support that, the ability to run your business in accordance with your values.
Yeah, no, that's right, Mike. And I'll say this has been something, that we've been seeing and talking about and praying about. For those of you who've been following CCV, this has been something we've been focusing on for a long time. And really over the last 2 years, we've been traveling all over the state, talking with business owners, saying, what are you concerned about? And actually, the stuff that Paul just highlighted is some of those very concerns about, I'm afraid they're going to see that I made a political donation over here and I'm going to get canceled, or I'm going to lose my bank, or I'm going to, I'm not going to be, they're going to see that I donate to the pregnancy center down the street, and I'm going to get, lose clients, or not lose clients, lose my law firm because of things like that. These are things that are happening, stories that you've seen reported all over the place. And so, and meanwhile, while all that's happening, we've been seeing corporate America and a lot of the chambers of commerce shift further and further to the left and kind of abandon their classical role of protecting free markets and general free speech and personal liberties that a lot of folks understood the chambers of commerce to do. And so as we were talking to business owners, what we really found, and we formed that initial network of the Christian Business Partnership, which was just sort of a network under CCV, we decided, we need to build something bigger and something that can really function and serve that old role that a lot of folks look to the chambers for. And that's where we came to this idea as a standalone Christian business partnership that is a full chamber of commerce. So what does that mean, that we're a full chamber of commerce? Is everything you go to a chamber of commerce for, you can get now from the Christian Business Partnership, but also know that all of your dues and all of the revenue off of the services you get from the partnership are going to advance values and issues you care about. So, I know a lot of folks get their health insurance through the Christian Business Partnership. They get their workers' compensation through their Chamber of Commerce. They get their workers' compensation insurance through their Chamber of Commerce. They get their 401k. They get HR benefit, like HR services and things like that. And then they get advocacy through their Chamber of Commerce. Well, all of that is now you're able to get through the Christian Business Partnership. And we rolled this out. We actually soft launched it a few weeks ago. We rolled it out publicly this week. There's billboards and radio ads and all this stuff all over the state promoting this. Actually, one of the benefits that you get through the Christian Business Partnership, if you come in at the sort of second level, the executive level, is we'll actually take the Spotlight report, the diagnostic tool that Paul Fitzpatrick was just talking about. We'll take all of your sort of different supply chain and vendors, and we'll run them through that system for you and give you a risk report to show what's your risk levels at right now, and what are possible things that you need to be looking at, and then we'll also be able to help you navigate what's good contract language that you should want to have to protect yourself along the way. This is going to be, really, we see this as the beginning of a movement, not just in Ohio, but across the country. One of the really exciting things too, Mike, that's come out of this as well since we launched is we've had different local leaders in towns across the country, folks from Reynoldsburg and Lima, reaching out saying, hey, we want to start a local chapter of the Christian Business Partnership and bring together local businesses to do networking and also get all the benefits from the partnership. So for folks that want to join, they can go to cbpohio.org. That's CBP, Christian Business Partnership, ohio.org. You can also go to the CCV website and get a link there. But you can go there, sign up. Your membership dues, your health insurance, all that kind of stuff would go through. You get that from us. I will tell you, we wanted to be really clear, both with all of the benefits we offered, that we're offering as good as, if not better, benefits than you'll get anyplace else. So for employers from 1 to $1 million, you can get your health insurance through us, and you'll get as good of, if not better, of a rate. This is full health insurance. It's not a Medishare. Not that there's anything wrong with the Medishare programs; those things are great as well. But we wanted to make sure if we're going to build something and put the name of Christ in it, we're going to do something as excellent or better than anything else out there. And grateful for our friends at 1792 for really driving the conversation around woke capitalism and making such a great service like the diagnostic tool you put together, the database, so folks can look into it.
Yeah, we're so thrilled about what you guys are doing. It's exciting.
So Paul, as we talk about what you said, we're hopeful to see businesses get back to neutral. Do you see options like this, like the Christian Business Partnership, as being sort of the tip of the spear, as a way that we can reverse those trends and start getting things back toward that more neutral position that you mentioned?
Yes, I think so, Mike. I think anytime groups of people get together and change their behavior, it is going to resonate with inside the company. So you've got the Christian Business Partnership. That's one way. If folks use our database, they print off the report, they go into their local branch, they happen to be a Bank of America client with their small business or nonprofit, and they print off and they say, hey, I see you're doing this. Are you going to cancel my contract or our agreement or deny us service? And would you change the terms of our agreement so that you won't do it? The more we change our behavior, it will ultimately force smart businesses to change their behavior. And let's be clear, some corporations are run by kind of what we call celebrity woke CEOs. There's not much is going to change their minds. As long as the company's doing okay financially, they're going to keep doing it. But there are countless people of faith, and just people of goodwill within these companies. Some of them are actually running these companies. They know it's wrong to have a politicized corporation. We want to show up as help. We don't want to beat them up. We frankly don't want all of them to quit and go work somewhere else. We want to be salt and light and help them be salt and light so that we can show up in a reasoned way and say, hey, when you do this, this is what it means to me and how it violates my principles, my faith, and it makes me not want to do business with you. Can you take this up to management, or you're in management? And so that's a way we want to engage in a principled, reasoned, calm way, which I know you guys do in Ohio as well.
Yeah, and that just sounds like such a different approach than what we're used to. We hear so much about, well, just boycott, just don't do that anymore. And you kind of leave silently. But here you're talking about engagement, actually engaging with these companies, and maybe it doesn't get them to change, but at least you're planting a seed, right?
Yes, and honestly, there are lots of ways you can engage. You could be just talking to the person at the checkout counter or your relationship manager if it's some sort of company. But lots of folks here are shareholders. So you can engage that way as a shareholder. You can go to meetings. You can go and dial into Zooms. You could submit resolutions. You could make sure you vote your proxies. You could write them. Again, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, if boycotts were easy and we were really good at them, we would call for them. But they're neither. And so we think the engagement model is probably the better way to go. Now, having said that, I fully respect, and I do it in my own personal life. There are times I say, this company is doing things and supporting things and underwriting things and subsidizing things that are violations of either my deeply held beliefs, my faith, our freedoms, that I am not going to subsidize that by shopping there. And I do that myself personally, and I think it's perfectly appropriate for people to do that too. But I think if it's frankly hard to do with some of the products, and so if we are going to continue shopping and engaging with companies, at least giving them our dollars, we might as well engage in a principled way.
That's right.
That's good. Paul, if you don't mind, could you just tell all of our audience today how we can follow along more with what the 1792 Exchange is doing, and some of the places that you're providing information, your website, certainly, and other social media accounts, or any place you're active like that?
Sure. Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, 1792exchange.com, our website. Folks can get on there. They can see the database. We've just launched the database on the website, so we'll be building out other resources, as I said, in this series on the Spotlight reports. You can put your name in there if you want to get on our list and follow what we're doing. We're on Twitter. We haven't gotten into all the other social media, but we're on there and just getting going from that public facing perspective.
Great. And I'll do a little self-service here. We just had you as a guest on our Narrative podcast last week, and that's available for people to go check out. And definitely, we scratched the surface today of some of those topics, but if people want to hear more about it, they could go check out that conversation. And Paul, I just want to say we really appreciate your time. We want to be respectful of your time today. And thank you so much for joining us here for a few minutes to talk about what 1792 Exchange offers and how we can do or at least how we can have options to fight against woke capitalism. Really appreciate your work.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, it's my honor to be on here. I really appreciate all you guys are doing. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
All right. Well, Aaron, we've got a few questions that have come in throughout the time today, and I just wondered if we could maybe catch a few of these in the last 10 minutes or so that we have here. A couple about the backpack bill, and I'm going to lump them together because they're all sort of asking the same thing about just the general timing of how this is going to unfold as far as votes go and things like that. And I'm going to guess that it's fair to say we don't know yet because it's going to be up to committees and stuff like that to set those deadlines, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a 2-year legislative session here. So really at any time over the next 2 years, they can move these bills. We think the best way of going about it is putting the backpack bill in the state budget. That's what we're going to be advocating for. And the reality is, we pass the budget every 2 years, goes from about January to June is that process. So by law, they have to pass the budget by June 30th. And most of the time they meet that deadline. And so we're going to be really pushing to get this bill put in there. And that's really the best way of going about it for a lot of different reasons. So that's really the time frame going forward.
Great. And then there's a question here about, with one of the places we've seen some disagreement, even with people that we would consider friends, is with how tying any kind of state funding to private schools and things like that may cause issues. Can you just speak a little bit to how autonomy of those schools could be retained, even if the backpack bill, or hopefully when the backpack bill passes?
Absolutely. And this is a very real concern. And what we always come back to and say is that, for CCV, religious freedom is one of our first and foremost issues, right? And so we would never support any legislation, anything that would undermine the autonomy and the religious freedom of Christian institutions, especially schools. The reality is that with voucher programs, scholarship programs like the backpack bill, like existing Ed Choice. So right now, about half the kids in the state are eligible for a voucher through the existing Ed Choice programs. The way the programs are written already does not give government control over curriculum. And more than that, and the way the backpack bills are written does not give government control over curriculum. More than that, a Supreme Court precedent says that. So we have had a slew of decisions over the last 5 years that have said very clearly, if you're going to have a program like this, this is the key. You know, states don't have to have school choice programs, right? There's nothing that compels them to do that. But if they are going to have a school choice program, they cannot discriminate against religious entities that are providing educational services. And so that is the key here, is that there's been multiple cases that have gone up to the court, and the court has said, because you're trying, and in all of these cases, you have states attempting to try to either force schools to teach something or block them out from accessing the program because they don't teach certain things, or they do teach certain things. The court has said time and time again, that is unconstitutional. And the reality is, we've had the Ed Choice program in Ohio for over 20 years. And the vast majority of evangelical and Catholic schools accept Ed Choice. And we've not ever had a school not be able to teach something because they take this. Now, again, you'll get some people that say, oh, well, I know of this private school that takes Ed Choice and they've gone woke. That's not because they took Ed Choice. That's because they had leadership that wasn't committed to biblical worldview, right? They had folks on their board or folks in leadership, or they had teachers that weren't teaching a biblical worldview. That had nothing to do with Ed Choice dollars. I always come back to, when people bring this up, I say, show me where in the law or in any law that Ohio has or will have, does it say that they can't teach a biblical worldview? But Mike, even to your point, even with all that, there is nothing in this bill that would require anybody or any school to accept these dollars. So if people still don't want to take these resources, they don't have to. They're able to completely opt out of the system, and we'll always protect and maintain that.
Well, I'm going to go to one here that could be a toss-up for either of you, so I'll let you fight over who's going to answer it. But just in general, the question is, with all the bills that we've discussed today, what's the sense from Governor DeWine that he would support these bills that we support?
Man, I was going to let David do this, but he's got a bad back, as you guys, for people who listen to the podcast, and so he can't really carry the weight right now. So
shots fired.
So
I'll take it, because
so I'll take this. I will tell you, Governor DeWine is been a friend on so many of these issues, right? We have been expanding the school choice programs for quite a long time, and he signed every expansion. And even in the budget he introduced, he has an expansion of school choice in his budget. It's not enough, though, and we have been talking with his office about the importance of expanding this all the way to backpack. That now is the time. You've had 4 states do this. Ohio needs to be next. And what I will say about the governor is, especially on these things, on issues of life, on issues of family, on issues like school choice and religious freedom, he's very receptive to the conversation. We don't always agree. Again, we have sued this governor before, and we've also had him come speak at events for us before. And that's how we operate at CCV. We for those who are in authority, we are going to respect them and work with them as best we can, but we're also going to hold them accountable. And so we think all of our bills, have a good chance of being signed by the governor. But this is where, again, it comes back to all of us. We have to make the case, show the support is there, tell the stories, bring the data forward to show the governor and show everyone that this is the right thing to do for the state. So we feel really confident about our ability to see these bills get signed. But at the same time, too, nothing is guaranteed, and we have to make that case.
A question about the abortion initiative. And Aaron, you mentioned that there'd be some announcements coming in the next week or so. Without giving too much away, this is going to be several organizations coming together under sort of one banner in order to present a united front, correct?
Yeah, again, I just can't say enough about the unit. And I will say, I don't think it's any coincidence that the Lord brought to us about a year and a half ago, the National March for Life reached out to CCV and asked if we'd help orchestrate the first March for Life. And through that, you saw the pro-life community come together like never before.
Yeah, awesome.
And show up strong and work together. And there's more dialogue happening between all the pro-life groups than I've ever seen. Created Equal, Ohio Values Voters, Ohio Christian Alliance, all these Cleveland Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio. We have been talking, we've been meeting regularly, and blowing up each other's phones on group texts, and all of that kind of stuff of hey, how do we keep this going forward? How do we work together? And so you're going to see a really unified front come out here in the next few days and weeks of saying, hey, let's do this together. We're going to need more than just us to win, but if we're not united, we have no chance. And so and I will say that spirit, I've just been blown away by the spirit that's come together. And that requires all of us of surrendering, right? Unity does not happen without surrendering our own agendas and coming together. And you're seeing that in the pro-life, because we all understand what's on the line right now.
Yeah. And last thing here along those lines, there have been several requests for resources or kind of quick responses, that type of thing. Those are the type of things that we're going to be producing together and then sending those out for our friends and allies, correct?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So keep an eye out for that, everybody. And we'll certainly make sure that you know about it through our press releases, social media channels, things like that, because we are going to want as many informed people out there being willing to speak up for the cause of life as we can find. And with that, gentlemen, I think we're pretty close to the top of the hour here. So Aaron, David, thank you so much. It's always great talking with you guys. I get the privilege of doing it around the office, but to be able to share these conversations with a larger group is always so much fun, and I appreciate